Welcome. Well, we have an interesting one for you here today. So many people tell us, oh, have to be on LinkedIn, have to be on LinkedIn. Absolutely. But when many people get on LinkedIn and they build out their profile, they get there and they go, well, now what? What am I supposed to do? Something doesn't seem to be happening. We're going to clarify for you today. Today is really the part 2 to my LinkedIn lecture. So if you haven't seen the original is right on my website, selfrecruiter.com, about halfway down the page, and you can see me large, the slides large, whatever you need. That's part 1 to this. And today's part 2. Let me just switch over so you can see this here. Welcome again. So as we begin to think about how we're going to kind of take back control and start to think about how we're going to affect the things that we want in our interview process and our job search process, really social media marketing is going to make the difference. And I know it's a phrase that right now we all go, what is that? What am I doing? What's involved here? Well, I'm going to simplify it down so you really see the benefits of it. Let me just see if I can adjust my remote here, which doesn't seem to be connecting. Maybe it needs a new port. A little bit better if it connects, then I don't have to be reaching up for the button all the time. There we go. Much, much better. So it's that title, or now that I have a great LinkedIn profile, what should I do with it? You know, getting progress to happen with our LinkedIn is a multi-stage thing. First thing you have to do is build out your career story on LinkedIn. You know, if we exist only on a resume today, their first reaction is, oh, great background. Oh, let's look at them on LinkedIn. They're not here. What's wrong with them? What are they hiding? And so, are they behind the times digitally? Are their skills maybe rusty? So there's a whole bunch of concerns there. But once you put up the right profile, that's only the right profile. It's like a great sales brochure sitting in a rack over in the corner collecting dust. How do you activate it? So that's the what do you do with it part of it. Or even another way to think about it is how do you take control of your career story and how people think about you. In case you haven't seen me before, John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker, resume and LinkedIn guru as well. So if you need some help there, I think you know where to find me. Let's dig right in. A few other resources. Don't forget to check my LinkedIn profile. Click on my articles. There are several articles there that will certainly help you in your job search. Let's let you listen to this. Let's make sure we have some volume. This is about 2 minutes, and then we're going to get started right away.
I'm John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker. And today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about using LinkedIn and getting the best out of social media marketing. Your business is built on perception. Perception of the products or the services or of your reputation. Business today is judged by web presence, not just a business's website. In our traditional work life, we didn't hesitate to network with the right people when an opportunity arose. That chance to meet the right people that could help our career. But as a small business owner, sometimes it's all you. It becomes easy for us to prioritize networking away. Oh, not today. Until it's never on today's list. We have so many other hats to wear if we are to reach our dreams. And those other hats are certainly more important. It's important for every small business person to network, to open doors that you may not have even imagined yet. You need to be reaching and communicating with current and potentially new customers or clients. You need to be out there contributing to the discussion about you. And with focus, it takes much less time than you really think to be effective. But you do have to take control. You have to develop your LinkedIn profile into a 3-dimensional sales brochure. all about you that naturally drives the reader to a singular conclusion. If I work with, hire, or buy from this person, it's the best business decision I'll make today. Then make use of social media marketing tools built into LinkedIn to be sowing your value across the network in updates and postings and other shares that influence the perception of you. Well, there's much more to share as we're just getting started. Now imagine that you have this great communication platform. By the way, that's your great LinkedIn profile that positions both you and your business professionally and effectively. And think about the effects of using and implementing a sharing on a schedule or editorial calendar to simplify your messaging. That's a powerful voice to be heard that affects perception. What would you want others to be thinking of when they are thinking of you? That's the important question.
Well, don't be distracted by your business. A couple mentions there. That's a piece I put together a few years back. Let me just reposition my mic here. I put that back together a few years ago for Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. So yeah, that was geared towards small business, but really it's the same thing. You have a career brand that you need to manage forevermore. We're not just going to have one more job. That's not really the world we live in today. We're going to have one more job, and after that, probably one more job, and after that, likely one more job. The sooner you begin to manage your career branding, the easier all of these transitions get, and the more opportunity opens for you. That's the real advantage here. Of course, today's lecture also involves becoming a self-recruiter, this one great recruiter, which will be you, that represents one great candidate, which is you. And that means we're going to have to think out of the box the way we network and the way we keep one eye always on that toughest competitor imaginable. Now, a few of the secrets to refreshing our career story, well, we have to update our resume, of course, but also there's a couple things on the digital side. One of them is to build out your LinkedIn profile so it becomes really much more than your resume, a three-dimensional sales brochure garden that's cultivated, curated, where you control every word of the story. That's something that should dazzle every time and should open doors for all those things that you'd like. Then the next stage past that is to put together this digital self-marketing campaign, which may sound distasteful because, we're not Kardashians for the most part. And I get that. But what we do need to learn is that perception changes everything. And you can't let somebody else manage perception and take your opportunity away from you. So we really need to brand our career, and we're going to have to market our contributions so people see it. Now, we're going to do it in a little bit of softer way so it doesn't feel like bragging, because that doesn't come off very well culturally. But it's much more like this. If they happen to be looking over your shoulder, seeing what you're reading, doing, sharing, attending, suddenly they become inspired. Oh, John's reading, doing, sharing, attending, everything that's right for this field. Oh, he must have his finger on the pulse. Yes, that's taking control of the discussion, creating engagement, which is a lot closer to that type of engagement. Job search is very close to a dating process, unfortunately. When we look at what social media to use, now today we're talking about LinkedIn, but I hope you think about what other platforms you may need to use in your job search. Most people, without becoming overwhelmed, can effectively manage 2 or 3 very tightly controlled social media platforms for job search. Now, what one should you use? Well, if we're not on LinkedIn, it becomes very difficult to be hired. They cast doubt right away that what's wrong with you? Are you real? How could you have this and not exist digitally? The world has moved on. We have to get over there. Next up is kind of frightening. I think you have to be on Twitter. Almost lose my lunch every time I say that. I think you have to be on Twitter. There it goes again. If we'd like to be hired. Now, I don't mean that we have to sit on Twitter. I'm on Twitter and I'm never on Twitter. What I mean is we open a Twitter account, we connect it to LinkedIn, and everything that I'll show you today that you share, you let seamlessly also flow out to Twitter, just out to the Ethernet. We don't know where it's going. It's just going out to the universe. And that becomes searchable content. if you're sharing just the right things that the best person that whoever you are as a product is, the best one of you would be, what would they be reading, doing, sharing, attending? Well, my gosh, you have to be doing that activity. That's how all those companies that have stopped posting jobs find their candidates. They don't want 1,000 to 2,000 resumes being sent in, so they don't even post. They simply go to Twitter. I can go to Twitter. You give me any industry, any position, any level. Give me a few minutes to think about it. I can come up with 4, 5, or 6 words to search on Twitter to find just the right best of the best. Oh, not the capable. It's like cat hair in your mouth. So many of those. The exceptional, no matter what the role is. Because exceptional people do a pattern of things. They'll go to certain conferences that are the conference. They'll go to certain books that everyone in the industry needs to be reading. They will have shared things like a best practices technical white paper on whatever their field is. Let's imagine you're in events, best practices technical white paper on events with a link, and you share it. By the way, you don't have to write it. There's lots of those out there, whatever your field is. You go find one, good, bad, or ugly. If I agree with it, oh, what a great take. There's my marketing message about myself. My opinion. Oh, John's opinion is it's a great take. Well, let's look. Oh, it is a great. Oh, this is a great take. Oh, John's opinion was right. What a great take on title, best practices for exactly what I do with a link. No, nice, short, simple, absorbable, convincing. If I'm not quite sure about the article I'm sharing, not quite sure I agree with, best practices for exactly what I do with a link. And they can look and see why I might have said that, or couldn't disagree more with best practices for exactly what I do with a link. Good, bad, or ugly doesn't matter. Just have an opinion. If you have no opinion, it doesn't stick to you. You don't build equity. Now, what other ones should you use? It's hard to say. Let's talk about the one you probably shouldn't use down in the corner, Facebook. And I do have maybe 2-3% of my clients that use Facebook for career. That means they have to have a very high self-editing capability. They really never get to do anything fun on Facebook because did you think that was funny? Well, it was funny at the time. You know, can't have that stuff come back to haunt us. So most people cannot really use Facebook that way, so I don't really recommend it. But Instagram, which you might go, wait, isn't that Facebook? Well, Facebook owns it, part of it. Instagram is widely used in career, certainly in creative. I don't know how that you don't use your Instagram if you're somehow in creative. By the way, my other half is in creative design, and they don't showcase their work typically on Instagram, but on their Instagram, they really showcase what catches their mind's eye. In other words, the broader strokes of what visually impresses them and influences them, which then leads to their masterful design, not the direct link. So it's an indirect influencer. By the way, I think it's so important. I have Instagram as one of the drop-down menus on my website, and usually that's a pretty good indicator of importance. And yet, if you go to my Instagram, there's nothing there about what I do professionally. Why is it there? You have to understand decision process. People want to know who you are. If they're going to hire you, if I'm going to hire you for my staff, I hire you for my project, or hire you to redo my resume on LinkedIn, they want to know who you are in addition to being qualified. So being capable and qualified alone in the modern world is really not enough. It's just not enough. We hire people for 2 reasons, assuming they're capable and qualified. And that is, why are you interesting? I have to spend my waking life with you, more time with you than my loved ones if I hire you. I want you to be, please be qualified, capable, but I want you to be interesting. I want to know what makes you tick, what drives you. And so that's why my Instagram's there. And what you find on my Instagram is me hiking up the Hudson Valley, or me hiking out in Yosemite and climbing Half Dome to the very top, or almost dying in the desert 2 years ago, August, out in California, 108 degrees, taking a wrong turn that added 2 miles in that kind of heat, and heart out of control. Luckily, I made it back. But it could have been a really ugly story. In other words, I got a great story out of it rather than the ugly one. Whether it's any of these that are the right ones for you, or all of these, there's endless new social media platforms. The goal is not to have it overwhelm your activity. As an example, this is what I do for a living, and I am not on social media more than 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes out of the entire day. The point is, don't live there. You're not a consumer of it. You're going to use it surgically to tell story, systematically to apply all your energies in job search. Now, let's bring this center stage. I'll go a little bit smaller here so we can just see this a little bit bigger here. Grab this off of Facebook. It was floating around a couple of years ago, but I thought it was pretty interesting the way it explains social media. So let's just take a quick peek at this and realizing that, well, what is it? Twitter, well, here's where I'm eating a donut, and Facebook is about liking those donuts, and Foursquare, well, who uses Foursquare anymore? Things shift so quickly. Instagram, well, here's a vintage donut. Well, we don't really use Instagram that way any longer, but you see how it's evolved. YouTube, of course, here I am actually eating a donut. And LinkedIn, well, my skills include massive donut eating, if I really eat those donuts. Pinterest, well, here's a donut recipe. And Last.fm, well, no one's listening to that either. So social media changes quickly. You need to change with it. Which are the 2 or 3 places you need to be? Certainly LinkedIn, certainly Twitter, whatever else could add something. This is about influencing how others see you. I can come back a little bit larger here. Now, the other reason we need to be there is all these things on screen here I don't have to read for you. This is second from the bottom, by the way, we will talk about, and that's staying on top of people's mind in your industry, in competitors' companies, in competitor organizations, without seeming to really have contact. Proper use of social media means they're aware of John Crant over here, or they're aware of Jack Smith over here, or Jill Jones over there, or whatever it might be, because they're constantly seeing your engaging material, which is just right for them, pop up right in front of them. That's how social media works. And yes, there's an algorithm behind the scenes that makes that match for you. We do have to learn to trust that just a little bit. Now, part of using social media is the fact that we have multiple profiles. So there's not just the things we share, but we also have a different profile. So LinkedIn has a nice profile, which is really about showcasing your career. And Twitter has a nice profile of this is whoever I am, and we get the rest of all these. So it's the profile setup itself has to work together without just being cookie cutter duplicate. I'm going to show you a couple of those coming up. So I want you to think about how you might slightly alter each of your profiles to work together systematically, but still present a slightly different aspect of who you are. Now, when you look at your different platforms, you have to think about, well, are my targets markets using this? If your target market isn't really using that platform, whoever you would like to get their interest, well, there's not much point in it. Why is it that you're using the platform? You have to understand that to start with. And what are your goals in each thing you share? There has to be some goal that you're after. We have to begin to think in these layered terms. Information is the new currency. I talk a lot about that on my LinkedIn lecture. Here, though, we're going to flip it. LinkedIn lecture is really about extracting information from LinkedIn that we can utilize in the job search. The Career Evolution Part 2 lecture is really about how we seed information to LinkedIn to influence how people perceive us. So it's an easy way to either reframe or reclaim any of the things that we need to retell. I don't need to read all that there, but that does mean you have to become a master of your own content. And most of us are so wrapped up in the modesty and humility, which are really amazing traits for all the rest of our parts of our life, but not job search, not career. These 2 areas, it works directly against us. We have to give ourselves permission to find a little bit of the inner Kardashian to get out of our comfort zone, I just have to hold my nose and do this thing so that I get the opportunity that not only I deserve, but my family deserves. As you saw that last one going by a little fast, there are 60 to 90 days. You can quickly change how people think about you. I have a client that I've worked with for a very long time. They're also a friend of mine. I hope you notice that the LinkedIn and the Twitter profile, they work together, but they look different. They work together, look different. This content then begins to flow across. So the story I was about to tell you, I have a client that, their perception, they had been working for quite some time in their field. And unfortunately, they were getting ready to make another shift, trying to get one level up, and came in second place twice in a row for director level. Second place. Okay, well, first off, do you know what second place is? A winner. Do you know what third place is? A winner. You do not come in first, second, or third unless you are a winner. They just didn't select you. You need to solve the problem of why didn't they select me so I can be the one selected next time. Well, my friend here, as we're talking about why second place, says, I'm getting ready for this conference, internal conference down in the Carolinas. I was getting some help from my coworker on PowerPoint. I'm like, well, what? My client's a technical program manager. This is a program manager doing rollouts, $250 million technical rollouts. And you're asking someone for help on PowerPoint? No simpler piece of software on this earth than PowerPoint. The other thing I remembered in discussing this was that they have this verbal tick of, I'm not technical. I'm not technical. I'm not technical. You know what you think about this person? Oh, not technical. You must have said it a million times. So first thing, I had to threaten to come down to King of Prussia, and with my kitchen shears, I'm like, bite your tongue. Don't let's hear it again. We got to break our habit of throwing ourselves under the bus. And secondly, we began a share campaign, like you just saw those slides going across the screen. And 60 days later, it went from second place to clear choice for the role into a role he'd never held before, head of process and quality. Did a great job and got his next promotion outside the company. So you can change perception very quickly, even if you've been sowing negative verbal things over time. But we have to understand we're a product, and we have to understand what that product can deliver, which means what do we do better? How are we going to be that standout? Why should they hire us over the others? Not just why am I qualified? It's a competition. There's 3 or 4 or 5 really sharp individuals. Why you over them? That's the question we have to answer. By the way, let's be clear. 8, 12, 15 years in a role does not make you an expert. By the way, you could be an expert. You could be an expert. But that alone does not make you an expert. Very likely does make you an expert in doing it one way. So, we need to break out of our box. Now, the beauty, if we've been in a long-term role, is you might have nice career progression. Then you have a way out of someone thinking that you may have only been a little too siloed, learning only one process. Let's think about how we're going to outmaneuver people that are quick and fresh to the field, and how we're going to outmaneuver those people that have a long-term background in the field. Both are your potential competitors. So either understanding how we are or will be this standout in our field, we're going to have to match that up with what we'd like to do. In the end, there's tremendous change right now. I have so many clients right now that have interview processes going on left and right. A client I was just on the phone with yesterday has been dealing with 2 or 3 offers over the last month, just almost to where they want them, but they feel there's so much opportunity, they're just not going to take the offer that isn't the right one. So now is a great time, but we may have to understand we have to adapt. New ideas, new ways of doing things. Those are the ways of the future. Having gone through the pandemic and a great percentage of the workforce working remotely, everything has changed. So we have to also change how they see us. We have to make sure they see us as the core elements that will make their business successful. Not only capable and qualified, but also still somehow exceptional. That makes you the standout. So focus in on what other qualities you have. What makes you tick? Where's your passion? What do you love to do? And all of that, we're going to take over to some strategic sharing as if it's a chessboard. I'm going to walk you through an entire social media plan. We're going to build one right here so you'll understand how to do it. But we have to start with how people are judging us. So what are they using to have some value judgment about us? Well, that comes down to what we're sharing. They're looking over our shoulder, and if we're sharing nothing, they probably don't have very much feeling about what we're involved in. Suddenly, we're sharing all just the right things about our field. That person is living and breathing their profession. By the way, working or not working, you can live and breathe your profession. Passion does not require payment. There's no payment here today. Hopefully there's passion here. So what should I share is what it really starts with. Projects that you worked on, or projects you initiated, or projects you developed. Absolutely. We're beginning to split hairs to understand the language we might use to get the maximum benefit that is truthful on what our involvement was, or maybe the results of the projects, or the levels of the accomplishments, or the books and white papers I'm reading. Information is the new currency. How are you going to utilize that? Now, as I do share something, let's look at LinkedIn as an example here. This is a 3-level network. As I'm sharing on LinkedIn here, it goes from me down in the corner out to the field. But if I just share it out, I never actually know where it's going. Now you have a couple options. You could share with connections, which you never do. Once a year, twice a year, very, very rarely do you want to burn out your connections. That's what's going to happen. Don't do it. Once a year, twice a year. You could share with groups. Absolutely. I love to share with groups. Everybody in the group suddenly can see you and respond to you. Very, very important. I hope that you're sharing into groups that are just right for your field. So all the people that you're trying to get to see you, suddenly you're advertising or sharing within their space exactly the content they want to see inside of the group. Very effective, very effective. Or you just share out to the ether. And LinkedIn will never really tell you where it goes, because if they told you where it went, you would work to game the system. But actually what I'm doing here is teaching you how to game the system with a blindfold on. Just trust that the algorithm in the background that really governs your destiny will see your profile and all the rich content story. They'll see your shares, which are directly related to your field. They'll see your comments and what you put out there, and then they'll go, oh, I only want to make money, which is clicks. How do I put this content in front of just the right people? Trust the algorithm. They'll match it up so the right people will see it. The more you share, the better the algorithm gets. Now, we have to manage our career marketing materials as part of this as well. So you have to create synergy across everything. Make sure your resume and LinkedIn work together. Make sure it works together with what you put together in the cover letter and everything you say through messaging and the shares. They all have to support one another. That's part of your brand management, so that no matter what they look at, they feel the same level of brand. Then we're going to have to open up Pandora's box. This is endless sharing, and yet we can keep it very, very simple. So before we get overwhelmed, we're going to take you right into how to build that plan, which is really not that difficult. Personal inventory starts that off. We're going to have to find our career assets, because not only would we like to share articles, books, events, things going on in the field, wouldn't you like to share some of your greatest hits ever from your background? That's part of it. So we may have to go back and do a little bit of a personal inventory. If you haven't done the resume or LinkedIn yet, go back and rediscover all the different things that could help you. By the way, some of those could be work life. Some of them could be non-work life. Don't forget the chemistry and confidence, in addition to being capable and qualified. Those are the two reasons they really, really hire you. All of that background you discover and think about as a share item, you're going to filter through the typical lens we always talk about. Why is it going to be the very best business decision they're going to make today if they choose to hire you? If it rises to that level, great, it's share worthy. And suddenly it goes on this roster list of things that I could share anytime. Sure, I'd love it to involve things like this, somehow affecting performance. But it doesn't really have to be. It just has to be something that's really right for your field or competitor or challenge within the field. Something that says I'm living and breathing it. And just make sure all of your materials are working together. Now, LinkedIn, de facto social networking website for the work life. Make sure to watch the LinkedIn video if you have not. Remembering that LinkedIn is this other whole aspect, which is how a business person would think of LinkedIn. But again, you have that career brand to manage forevermore. You have to think of the communications, research, marketing, and advertising aspects of LinkedIn and how that will elevate your brand. Now, here's my numbers. I have about 11,906 direct connections. 3 levels out, that's better than 21 million people. The whole goal of all these shares is to someone to go, gosh, John's always sharing something interesting. Who is he? Click, and then they're on your sales brochure. These shares lure them back to you, where hopefully you are labeled 500 plus. By the way, even if you're at 0, you could be at 500 plus in 4 days. Please watch my LinkedIn video. The technique is right in there. If you just implement it within 2 hours of doing it, 4 days later, you'll be at 500 plus. And then you look like a mover, shaker, finger on the pulse. How could you have an amazing background? 70 connections. 70 connections with this background? Are you even real? How is that possible? You have to look like the competitor, which is 500 plus. Now, the shares themselves will then begin to populate as continuing content right on your own LinkedIn profile. In fact, the ones you're most proud of, you can go, no, feature this one, feature this one. So not only will you have a regular roster of activity, people looking over your shoulder, but your greatest hits you could put going, oh yeah, feature these 3 because I want them to always see these things. This is the window on your LinkedIn profile that will pop up, which allows people to look over your shoulder. What's John been reading, sharing, addressing? What's he involved in? What's driving him? And of course, as much content of your own that you can put up there is also helpful. Let's get over to the plan itself. Now, whatever platform, I'll leave that up to you. Certainly LinkedIn, and I'd recommend Twitter as well. Value in every word that we share. It's as simple as possible. That's what's going to open doors. Now, perception is reality, and we have to change perception. Sometimes we change it simply with small, little changes. It's so simple. Now, I think this is the screen. Let's hope for, there we go. Create a social media marketing share plan. So I want you to spend, after the homework, I want you to spend no more than 2 minutes per day. 2 minutes per day, you can execute a very effective social media marketing plan. Does take about 2 hours of homework to set it up. In building your social media share plan, so simple. I'm going to select 25 to 30 content items. If you have some of your own from what you've done, like you've seen what I've shared, if you have some of your own stuff, fantastic, but you don't need to. You could simply be the aggregator, the collector for your field. I had someone that came to one of my lectures, just graduated from college, and we were talking about LinkedIn and talking about really group strategy. There's so much you could do with group strategy. I said, that'd be really wonderful if someone at the start of their career would really create a group and begin to collect everybody that could help them throughout their career. Of course, younger folks connect those dots very quickly. Next lecture this person came to, they filled me in that they created this group, which was not called I'm looking for a job. In fact, they wanted to work with underserved youth community, endangered youth community, people that were at risk. And it's a wonderful thing. It's an area that really needs focus. So this person at the start of their career, not the expert themselves, I can't say anything as an expert. I'm no expert yet. So they created a group. And then before doing anything in that group, before inviting people, they populated the group with all this wonderful content, searching the net, looking for everything that talked about working with at-risk youth. What are the challenges? What's going on in the industry? What are the players? Populate the whole group with that content, and then systematically went and invited every single employee from every single organization that works with at-risk youth. Now they've developed an entire closed ecosystem that they control, which will have every decision maker for their entire career. Gosh, the only one that's told me that has done that, but there's so many things you could do. To simplify here, let's just do a quick share. So I'm going to look for articles, books, or events. I can for articles, I go to Google. No love for Google here. But in this case, I really do mean it. Don't use DuckDuckGo, go to Google, click the news tab. You're going to get different results. Put in a few keywords about your field, about the players in the field, about the challenge going on in your field. And what you'll find is all these articles from all over the country that are all about those topics that you're interested in. Suddenly, you look like you're living and breathing your profession. Each one of them has a title. Grab the title, put the title in quotes. Maybe paste it onto a Word document or a text document. Behind the title, there's a URL with the link. Grab the link, put the link right behind the title. Title in quotes, so the brain can grab it. And then you put your 3, 4, 5, 6 words of opinion right in front of it. Oh, what a great take on. Couldn't disagree more. Not sure I agree with. Whatever you feel. That's the articles. Books, I go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, whatever you like. Every book that's right one for your field, you have to be reading or have read that book. Well, go get the title of the book, in quotes. Go get a link. There we go. A few words of opinion. Can't wait to read. And then you better read it if you haven't. What a great read. If you have read it. Don't fudge on that, because you'll get an interview and they go, what about chapter 13? Oh, I wish I did read it. No fudging there. You have to actually do it. If it's an event, every event in the next 30, 60, 90 days already has a website. Most of those are virtual now anyway, but some may still be in person, whatever it might be. Virtual or in person doesn't really matter. Those events, you can talk about them now. The event has a name, in quotes, has a link, there it is, and a few words of your opinion. If you told me that, well, the best people in my field all go to this conference in Vegas, October 3rd, fantastic, a few weeks away, but I can't go, I can't really afford it. Who said you should go? But you could talk about it right now. that conference in Vegas on October 3rd has a website right now. I could grab that link and I could share right now going, so excited for the such conference in Vegas on October 3rd, which is true. Absolutely, that are true. I am so excited. I didn't say I was attending. Now I have a connection, a footprint to that conference. Even the week before the conference, I could pick out some very special speaker that's just right for my field that I'd love to be somehow associated with, even though there's no association. And I could say, can't wait to hear such and such speak at the so-and-so conference in Vegas, October 3rd. I can't wait because I won't be there, so I can't wait to hear them speak. What I said was absolutely letter true, but there's a little bit of gray area there. You do have to get comfortable with the gray area. But you can also sign on for a virtual session right during it. Then you pick up your little camera phone. You angle your keyboard a little sideways. You take a little screenshot that has everything. You post that going, so interesting listening to such and such speak at the keynote for such and such conference. And then you have that connection to the right conference or the right book or the right event. And that's the combination of things. Someone will search to find just the right person. By the way, if anything is so special, these 3 items are so special I'd like to share, then you put it on an editorial calendar or just open up another calendar on your computer and you mark which day those would you'd like to share. The rest, I simply wake up in the morning, grab the first coffee, and I go, copy, paste, share. What was that, 15 seconds? Second cup of coffee, copy, paste, share. Time for lunch, copy, paste, share. Afternoon coffee hound, copy, paste, share. End of day, copy, paste, share. 4, 5, 6 times a day, 2 total minutes out of the day. There's no thought. It's like breathing. I get to wherever I stop today, I continue there tomorrow. And I go down, down, down. I get to the bottom, right back as if this was a little gerbil going around on a wheel, right back to the top. And I keep sharing the same list of 25 to 30 items for 6 to 8 weeks. Statistically, no one will be able to see a repeat the way the internet works. You have to trust that and just send that stuff out. You do it like breathing, 2 minutes a day with the 2 hours of homework to pull the lists eventually and write your comments. And it changes everything. So think about all the things you could talk about yourself, or think about all the things you could talk about that are going on in the field between books, articles, and mix it all up. And suddenly they go, wow, you are the one that must have the answers. Now we have to think like a storyteller. Does have to be true. But this is a date. That means it's our job to set the stage and set the atmosphere. Really try to get them in our shoes, looking out of our eyes the way we say something. We do have to be truthful, but there's a big difference between being truthful and confessional. I grew up Catholic. I know all about confession. This is not the time to confess anything. Everything I say or disclose is true, but tightly controlled. That is marketing, not just let it go. Really giving yourself permission to kind of look backward. If we're retelling our own story, look backward with really rose-colored glasses. Primarily all true, but all the negative goes away and only the positive is there. It's all wonderful enrichment that makes me a sharper individual today. And then I convey that, whoever I'm speaking to or writing to, really as if they're a dear old friend I hadn't seen in 5 years. You give yourself that kind of permission for a casualness, and it's irresistible. I had a client just a week before last reaching out to a CEO of a $2 billion financial company because, of course, I'm not a believer of applying online for the most part. I understand that people may do that, but ends up being a waste of time for most people. Let's get right to the decision maker. Well, this person, for what they did, decided to go right to the CEO of a $2 billion company. And they wrote their outreach and they sent it to me, and I casualized it and sweetened it ever so. And the CEO responded right back to them going, I don't know what it was. There was something about your letter. I just had to respond. Here's 4 days and my cell phone next week. When would you like to speak? That's what can happen by reaching out and changing everything and putting people in your shoes and giving yourself permission to talk to them like a dear old friend. The world has changed and we have to change with it. This is about nuance and communication, and it's certainly about influence. So nudge, nudge, nudge as much as possible here. It's really going to make a big difference for you. Let me inspire you here by showing you a few of my shares. Now, most of my shares are going to be right for what I do, even though they don't seem to be uplifting. Maybe we can make these a little bit larger so you can see them a little bit more. Maybe a little smaller here for me. And so up here on the top left, first year I was at Rainbow Push Wall Street Project. Found myself up on stage with Reverend Jesse Jackson and 4 other career coaches. And I'm like, how do I get here? How did that happen? I got there from opening doors. I was giving lectures at one of the YMCAs back in those years, and I gave someone some help, and later on in the summer, they called me up and said, hey, thanks for the lectures. Got a job at Rainbow Push. I'm over here for the national conference. I'd like to walk your book into the room. I'm like, what's your address? I'm running out to FedEx right now. Of course. And 6 months later, suddenly I found myself up on stage next to the Reverend Jesse Jackson. But, the good and bad in life all happens at the same time. And I'm glad the little picture of me from all those years ago is pretty small, because if you really zoomed in there, you might go, oh, John looks a little stressed. Yes, I look a little stressed, not because of the event, but because of life. That was the same week my father was passing away in hospice. So I'm traveling to Florida back and forth on the weekends to see my dad, who was in bright spirits right to the last moment at 91. Catholic deacon. He was so excited that it's like, wow, how do these things happen to you that you're going to be up on stage with Reverend Jesse Jackson? And I'm like, opening doors. But the day of the event, that's the day that I had 2.5 hours sleep because of all the stress. So whenever the opportunity knocks, we have to be ready, whether we'd like it that day or not. Top right, I'm over at the Google headquarters. Someone, radio show hosted, invited me over. Said, oh, you going to Social Media Week keynote at Google? I'm like, oh, yes, absolutely. When is it? Friday, 8 a.m. I'm like, oh, great. Show up, and of course, the radio show host did not show up. But interesting things. A couple articles, not very uplifting, but actually perfect for what I do and what I talk about. Of course, then I was on WHCR, Voice of Harlem Radio, so I shared that, or I was up, really has nothing to do with what I do professionally, but I was up lobbying on behalf of the New York Public Library for funding. So I went up and visited actually several times over the years, the lawmakers up in Albany to make a pitch for this public safety net. By the way, I don't get funding from the library, so I wasn't going after my own funding. This is simply, good works to illustrate character and to help the public. Down in the bottom right, of course, featured in AM New York, as I have been many times, and broke the regularly scheduled record at the library. I'm very competitive, so that was exciting to me. I always I want to win. Suddenly I get called going, you're in Essence Magazine. I'm like, who is this? Am I getting punked? Oh, I should look. Maybe I'm in Essence Magazine. First, it was hard to find because Barack was on the cover, and there's really no magazine stores left, and this was 2012. But suddenly, there's my book right on the reading list. By the way, shorter gal in the picture there, she's the one that got me in there. She's talking to some other career coach. You can ignore that for a minute. But my book is on the reading list simply because I learned to open doors. She happened to be outside of one of my NYPL lectures and the live ones in person when we had them. I would be out on the sidewalk answering questions till everyone was done. And she said, gosh, I'm blogging about my job search for Essence Magazine. I'm like, oh my gosh, you should have my book. Oh yeah, I can connect the dots fairly quickly. Why wouldn't I connect those dots? Trust that it would happen. Something might positive come out of that. From that, by the way, a lot of things have happened. I ended up on Arise TV with Christina Brown, learned to open doors. And from that, some great connections happen. Life we go through very transactionally, which is a mistake. Well, if I do this, what do I get? Well, I don't know. But I know what you're going to get if you keep doing the same thing. We have to change or become that dinosaur that becomes gasoline in someone's tank. Few of them are shares. This was a event at Morgan Stanley, great event. So I shared that picture, did something for Grace Institute, which I have done quite a few times, and what a great organization. A couple of years ago doing my online boot camp, getting ready to try to get that whole thing live here shortly on my website, but was doing it as a live version a couple of years ago, and someone captured this picture. Of course, Catholic deacon as a father. I saw my father in that pose all the time. He would love that shot. Or up at WHCR Voice of Harlem Radio, or whatever it might be. All of these things become avenues of influence. So think about, what projects did you work on that are sellable, or what initiatives did you lead that could be interesting, or maybe you've been members of certain committees. Well, you wouldn't be popular with this committee, but very necessary skill set. Or maybe you're reading Social Media Marketing, an Hour Day by Dave Evans. Oh, what a great book. Got me up to speed. There's ways to utilize all this, but you have to be thinking about constant storytelling, constant getting credit, which ultimately will make you more valuable. These are the figurative small little nudges over and over and over that change perception. Even sharing accolades and praise and kudos to others. Congratulations, Dave. I see you're reading Social Media Marketing, an Hour a Day by Dave Evans. What a great book. really got me up to speed. Well, you don't think I'm not going to get my credit in there at the same time. You have to think about that. Other thing I want you to think about is also just being a leader and taking credit for it. You've probably done this many times in your career, so you have to think about, times there have been a problem that might have been being resolved or something unresolved or something not developed. Why are you waiting for something to be assigned to you? Now, I work for myself at this point, but I've worked for others many different times. Every time I've ever held a job with somebody else, I simply act like I own the company. And I don't mean the way you're probably thinking. I act like that's my money invested. How would I do this job if that was my money on the line? Grew up in small business. That's what you learn in small business. And you know what? You'll do your job substantively different if it's your money on the line. So begin to allow yourself to act that way and also take the credit for that. And understand that every single thing that you share, all communications become part of social media, including your emails, your messages, all of that, right down to even a signature block on your email. What? Signature block? When you open an email to send a new email, is it blank? You don't have a signature block. Probably need a little 12, 13-year-old niece or nephew to come over. They can probably install one in about 90 seconds. This is my ridiculously long email signature. I was horrified the first time I wrote this out. Grew up Catholic. It's like, what would my mother think? Wow, John, looks like you made it. We have to give ourselves permission to get out of our comfort zone. I was certainly not comfortable with this, but it's all true. Once you've earned it, it's real. So I don't expect yours to be quite that complex, but even if they're this simple, this is something that can help you tremendously every single time. Demonstrating you're easy to contact, demonstrates your full sales brochure with every email going out, anything else that you might like to include there. All of those communications are designed to reinforce the qualities that they're looking for. Are you ready for that? That's your job today. Be persuasive, be engaging, be confident, be ready, and let's get ourselves out there. Well, thank you guys for tuning in for today. This is Career Evolution. I do have a very special 11 a.m. Session on Friday, which is part of the Ask Self Recruiter series. That's a separate series than this. That's a very short form, 15, maybe 20 minutes, where we handle 2-3 job search questions at a time, really to give you a whole library of content that will help you in your job search. Check those out. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that kind of fun stuff. And please do share with your friends. And if you need some help elevating your career brand, elevating your career story, fixing certain things in your background, there's always a way. Let's talk. My packages are right on the website under the services tab, and talk to you soon. Take care.